Good evening, and welcome to this evening's commemoration of the Bicentenary of the birth of the Bob. My name is Laura Ayford, and it is my pleasure to be here with you this evening as your Master of Ceremonies. This year, 2019, marks the 200th anniversary of the birth of the Bob. The Bob is the herald of the Baha'i faith and a new messenger of God. The Bob's dramatic ministry and message of unity paved the way for the appearance of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. Before I introduce you to the program for this evening, I would like to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, the Piikani, Kainai First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nations, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. So now on to our program for this evening. In the hope of providing you with an image of some of the many salient moments in the history of the life of the Bob, a short drama of 6 vignettes will be presented tonight. The theatrical scenes are an attempt to depict events of significance in the ministry of the Bob, such as the Bob's declaration of his divine revelation on May 23, 1844. The Bob's teachings represented a spiritual revolution that upended the prevailing social, political, and religious order in Persia at that time. One of the teachings of the Bab was that he raised the social status of women, powerfully represented by the first female believer called Tahireh. His teachings were met with fierce opposition from the clergy and government, resulting in the persecution and killing of 20,000 of his followers, as well as his own execution. The Bab appeared in 19th century Persia, a country that was enshrouded in the darkness of oppression, senseless dogmas, inequality, and corruption. Disillusionment and hopelessness prevailed. The Western world at that time was on the brink of discovering numerous scientific inventions and social changes that would bring about a profound effect on humanity. Welcome to the vignettes of the life of the Bob.
Yeah, I got it. I'm good. Okay, I'm fine. I'm good. I can't believe my editor, he wants me to write a feel-good news story for the paper tomorrow. Does he realize it's 1819? The world is a mess. Heck, I'm a mess. How on earth am I going to write a feel-good news story considering everything that's happening in the world right now? I mean, people are sick. They are dying. They are jobless. There is war everywhere. What on earth am I going to write about for the paper tomorrow? I mean, Let's look at the paper. What do we got? Oh, here we go. War. War is everywhere. It looks like Napoleon just invaded Russia. I don't think that's going to work out too well for him. What else do we got? Slavery. Slavery is alive and well in every country. That's not too good. What else do we have here? Child labor. Pretty much half the workforce are kids. This is just terrible. What else? Women's rights. What? They have no rights. It's 1819. They can't vote. They can't own property. They can't do anything. This is awful for women. What else do we got? North American Indians, just awful. The Land Reclamation Act basically says they have to get off their land. And when I say get off, I mean they're killed. It's awful. Oh my God, what am I going to write about for tomorrow's story? Oh my goodness. I mean, there is no kindness in the world. There is no decency. There is no love or compassion. The world is falling apart. There are no values. There is no justice. My editor, he said to me, well, why don't you write about the Industrial Revolution? And I thought to myself, that sounds like a lot of greed and corruption. I don't think that's up my alley. Oh my God, what am I going to write about? What am I going to write about? What am I going to write about? Oh, hey, what's that?
Oh, I just rescued this cat from the river.
You rescued a cat from the river?
Yeah.
I think that's my good news story.
Extra, extra, read all about it. U.S. official says that in 1844, everything has been invented. Patent office may close its door.
What? Samuel Morse invents the telegraph. Congress gives him $40,000 to expand his invention.
Vulcanized rubber revolutionizes wheels.
Printing press patented. Faster news at your fingertips.
Measures being taken to abolish child labor. Hey, wait a second.
The typewriting machine makes writing faster.
Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone, a device that will allow people to speak to each other from long distances. But that thing is huge.
Who knows, maybe someday it'll become so small, it'll fit in the palms of our hands.
Don't be ridiculous. That could never happen.
First Congress of Women's Rights take place. Declared men and women created equal.
Does this mean that women can own property and earn money and vote now?
I give praise and thanks to God for having bestowed upon me this mighty gift.
I feel like such a lowly servant
Who's honored with a most mighty revelation. When I first met
Bob, he wrote these words to me.
O thou who art the first to believe in me. Verily I say, I am the Bob, the gate of God, and thou art the gate of that gate. 18 souls must, in the beginning, spontaneously and of their own accord, accept me and recognize the truth of my revelation. Unwarned and uninvited, each of these must seek independently to find me. This revelation,
So suddenly thrust upon me, struck me like
a thunderbolt,
numbed all of my senses and faculties.
excitement,
Joy, awe, wonder, stirred the depths of my soul.
I had been searching for the promised one for so long.
I'm going to tell you a story. It sounds unbelievable, but as God is my witness, it is absolutely true. That first night I was with the Bob, I had in my mind one of the chapters from the Boran, the story of Joseph. I thought to myself, I'm going to ask the Bob to explain this story to me. And I would judge that explanation, that commentary, as one of the proofs of his extraordinary claim of being the promised one. No sooner had that thought crossed my mind than out of the blue, unasked, the Bob started to explain that very story, the story of Joseph, in language that was beautiful, eloquent, thought-provoking. I've never heard anything like it. It's as if he knew what was in my mind and in my heart. I was enchanted by the magic of his voice. I saw and heard many wondrous things that night. At one point, I was so affected and shaken that I arose to take my leave. I had to get out of there. The Bob smiled at me. He asked me to stay. He said to me that if anybody were to see me in my state, they would think I had lost my mind. Truth is, I had never been happier or more confident about anything. After that meeting, there was no doubt in my mind that the Bab was the 12th Imam of Islam, the Ghaim, the Promised One. My friends, he has come. The Promised One is come.
In the Western world, in mid-1800s, there were stirrings in the development of science and inventions, but also of messianic expectations from the Christian and Islamic scriptures. Quietly in the land of Persia, in the city of Shiraz, on May 23, 1844, an event occurred that at that time did not get any headlines in any newspapers. But soon after, this event would cause a tremendous stir in that country, and a commotion of excitement and great drama would unfold.
The promised one. I am the one whose name you have for 1,000 years ago, and whose mention you have risen, whose advent you have longed to witness, and the hour of whose revelation you have prayed God to hasten. Verily I say, it is incumbent upon the peoples of both the East and the West to obey my word and to pledge allegiance to my person. I am the promised one. I am the promised one. I am the promised one.
O slumbering one, the beloved has arrived. Arise. Brush off the dust of sleep and self. Arise. Behold, the good will has arrived. Come not before him in tears. Arise. Someday, when the women of Iran are emancipated and history is written, you will come across my story and my many names. My parents named me Zarin Taj. Later in life, I became known as Goratul Ain. But my most treasured title is Tahireh. I was born in Gazvin, a prominent city in Persia. My father was a very famous and learned clergyman. He used to call me his prodigy because I loved to learn. I could not go to school, however. I was a girl, you see, but my father would allow me to listen to him teach at his religious classes from behind curtains. One night, I had a dream where I saw a young man, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, standing in the air. Then this young man knelt down and began to pray. I memorized one of his prayers and quickly wrote it down when I awoke. Such beautiful words touched my heart deeply. I knew then that he was the promised one, whose coming was foretold by the religions of the past. He called himself the Bab. I began to tell others of this new manifestation of God. The joy and excitement I felt could not be contained. But this infuriated my father and husband. I learned, however, that my sister's husband, Mirza Muhammad Ali, was leaving in search of the promised one. So I wrote a letter, sealed it, and gave it to him so that when he found the truth, he would deliver it to the Bab on my behalf. I never had the privilege of being in the presence of the Bab, and my family increasingly opposed my beliefs. And in the summer of 1848, my father and my father-in-law arranged to have me put under house arrest. My heart ached to be reunited with my fellow Babis and to help spread the faith of the Bab. Somehow, news of my detention reached Baha'u'llah, and he intervened immediately. He had his family take care of me and eventually ensured that I would attend the conference of Badasht alongside him and about 80 other Babis, including my dear friend Gordus. The Bab, however, was imprisoned and could not join us. We were in Badasht for 22 days, and towards the end of our stay, Baha'u'llah was feeling ill. All the others were gathered around him, and I too wanted to be there. That is when I walked out of my tent without my veil. Everyone was shocked and confused. To see me without my veil was so outrageous that one man cut his throat with his own hands. Shaking and bloody, he ran away. The sight of a woman's unveiled face was to them inconceivable. How dare I do something like this? Well, this didn't happen by chance. Ever since we arrived in Badasht, we had been studying the Bayan, the holy book revealed by the Bab, and under Baha'u'llah's guidance, began revolutionary changes to our habits. Things like the way we worshipped, our prayers and rituals began to transform. Each day, a new law was introduced, and old traditions were abandoned. The Bab was preparing us for a new age he told us that we must develop a new character, one that will manifest the attributes of God, and to exemplify by our deeds and words the signs of his righteousness, his power, and glory. This new momentum gave our gathering such joy and excitement. Baha'u'llah gave each of us present in Badasht a new name for the new day, one that reflected our innermost being. He called me Tahire, meaning the pure one. By calling me the pure one, Baha'u'llah ensured that my dignity and morality remain unquestioned. What appeared to others as a great act of defiance, the removal of my veil, was actually the evolution of our new faith. The emancipation of women was set in motion. Tahrir is but floating dust at your feet, drunk by the wine of your face, awaiting your blessing.
Your Excellency, Your Majesty, Your Majesty, this merchant that they call the Bab is turning the country upside down. He is filling the heads of the people with sacrilegious thoughts. His talk of the coming of the Promised One is ludicrous.
He has already won over many scholars and some of our most devout men and women. If word gets round that some of our most influential people have become devoted to the Bab, there will be no end to his power and influence.
Your Majesty, there are already upheavals all over the country and clamorings of revolution and civil unrest. We must act quickly to contain this.
Your Majesty, at a large gathering of his followers at Badasht, the poet Tahir removed her veil in front of the men who were gathered in strict disobedience to our laws and our religious practices. Exactly what will happen if the women start to demand such freedom, Your Majesty.
Don't you remember that our most trusted religious scholar, Bahib, whom we sent to disclaim this sacrilege, has become one of his most ardent followers? I find some of the teachings of the Bab most troublesome, and in order to give an accurate account to you, Your Excellency, I wrote them down. My sentiments exactly. The Bab has said that the time has come to remove the power of the clergy that the clergy are no longer the keepers of the word, the interpreters of its mystery, the expounders of its knowledge. The people of this country are dependent upon the clergy. And what will replace the clergy? The Bob has also said that everyone, even the peasants and women, are encouraged to study and think for themselves. How will they do that if there's no clergy? Can you imagine the people studying and thinking for themselves? The Bob has also said they should pray and search independently for what is true, and believe in the equality of men and women.
Blasphemy.
There's no, if word gets around that our most trusted scholars have become followers of the Bob, it will be utter chaos.
Your Majesty, the followers of this Bob are spreading their teachings all across the country like a wildfire about the coming of the promised one. Even the Tsar of Russia has recently instructed his consul in Tabriz to fully inquire into this movement. It is pure sacrilege to have a man claiming to be the new messenger of God. Blasphemy.
Blasphemy. Your Majesty, is it the purpose of the Bob's movement to question the very basis of our social order? Why, even you, the Shah, would be in danger. We must act now and decisively to control this situation and put an end to it. Your Majesty, all you have to do is to give the order for the execution of the Bab.
Yes, Your Majesty.
We will then deal with it and peace restored.
Excellent. We tried everything we could. Nothing has worked.
We just have to wait for the Shah to make a decision at this point.
That's enough! We've heard enough. You, the minister, give the order at once.
Your Majesty.
It shall be done. Put this madness behind us, once and for all.
Your Majesty.
Leave my sight.
We have succeeded in our plans.
Our plan is in
Now we can pray and fast in
Our
peace.
position is assured.
Yes.
We are now in control.
I just can't believe it. They actually executed the Bob. And I can still see the smoke, smell the smoke from all those muskets, even here in this prison cell. Unbelievable.
That is us, a wayward generation.
It reminds me of the last things the Bob said, actually. I wrote them down. Let me find them here. Had you believed in me, O wayward generation? Listen to everything he had to say here. Every one of you would have followed the example of this youth who stood in rank above most of you and willingly would have sacrificed himself in my path. The day will come when you will have recognized me. That day I shall have ceased to be with you. This is so hard to understand.
Truly, that youth, what was his name again?
I think his name was Anis.
Ah, yes, a niece. What would possess him to give up his life like that to a mere stranger? To stand in front of 750 muskets, twice, that took courage and faith. I heard that the bodies were so smashed together, they couldn't tell them apart.
I don't understand it either. I mean, the Bob was in this cell with us for, just a few days, but it's a huge loss for everyone. What's going to happen to the rest of his followers? Will his message even survive?
I don't know. I don't know. The government, all those clerics and ministers and princes, they were so afraid of the Bob's message that they had him killed. I don't know why they did that. When I met the Bob, I found him to be a gentleman. So kind and patient.
They even said he was descended from the Prophet Muhammad. And everyone in this prison has stories to tell about the Bob. He was not just an extraordinary man. He was no ordinary child either. His father died when he was very young, born in Shiraz. He lost his father, so he was raised by his uncle instead.
I did not know that. Have you heard the story of when he was sent to school?
No, I haven't. Tell me that one.
Well, when he was a young boy, 5 or 6, he was sent to school. But he so amazed the teacher with his depth of knowledge and understanding that the teacher brought him home saying, I have nothing to teach this gifted child.
Since when has a teacher ever sent a child home from school for being too intelligent?
So true. Nevertheless, what is a household to do? He couldn't stay at home. A young child like that would just get in the way. So they sent him back to school. But this time, with strict instructions to just sit quietly and pay attention. I wonder about that school teacher. Every time he would look down at that youth, knowing that he knew more than he did.
I heard a couple of the guards talking. They just took the bodies, they dumped them in a ditch. They've got guards watching it now to make sure nobody goes anywhere near them.
In the ditch, with guards around. That won't stop those bodies. I'm sure they'll recover the remains.
When the Bob would talk about his message here in this prison, I just don't know what's going to happen to his followers now. Because he talked about how he's a messenger of God, but that his mission is to pave the way for another messenger of God, one who will bring the message of peace and justice promised in all major religions to the world.
I don't know if that message will ever be heard now that he's been killed. I just don't know.
Something is starting to happen here, though.
Yes, yes.
There could be blood in the streets.
I would not want to be a Bobby now. Mark my words, that will happen.
Something has begun, most definitely.
I feel it in here. Even in this prison, something has been opened. Something.
The sacred remains of the Bab, with utmost devotion and care, were brought to their final resting place chosen by Baha'u'llah on Mount Carmel in what is known today as Haifa, Israel.
Oh, glory be to this day, the day in which the fragrances of mercy have been wafted over all created things, a day so blessed that past ages and centuries can never hope to rival it. A day in which the countenance of the Ancient of Days hath turned towards his holy see. Thereupon the voices of all created things, and beyond them those of the concourse on high, were heard calling aloud, haste thee, O Carmel, for lo, the light of the countenance of God, the ruler of the kingdom of flames, and fashioner of the heavens, hath been lifted upon thee. Call out to Zion, O Carmel, and announce the joyful tidings. He that was hidden from mortal eyes is come. His all-conquering sovereignty is manifest. His all-encompassing splendor is revealed.
I grew up on the south side of the city. I was raised with a black mom and a white dad, and I grew up mostly with my mom, and so we lived in mostly all black neighborhoods. I went to all black schools. You have African Americans that are currently oppressed by this system that wasn't designed for their prosperity in the first place. How are we going to address this issue of racial prejudice and racial injustice? And how will we create a system that allows for all people to prosper spiritually and materially?
In our region, people in higher castes who work in government offices, in schools, and in public places are always in positions of authority. For this reason, those who are rich are becoming richer, and those who are poor just become poorer and poorer. When will this gap between the castes end?
Mi familia en particular es como de esta.
My family in particular is one of those traditional Chilean families. Religion and community life were always very present.
Como muy presente. Yo creía que
I thought there was no room to question these types of traditions, that we were just repeating. I was really longing to find someone to tell me it's okay for you to think differently, to have a different understanding of the world.
comprensión sobre el mundo es otra.
When I think of my childhood or I think of my adolescence, it was a violent society, and it was a society that was divided. And the way that was expressed was through, really through a war. Often people that you knew got killed. Because it's everywhere, it's very difficult to have a vision of life that transcends what's happening. I began to ask questions about the way we lived in this country. You know, why are we as a society at war? We don't seem so different. Are we so different?
The society I was born into, and within which I grew up, has its own very beautiful traditions, and I like these traditions very much. However, there is still this attitude towards girls that puts them in a lower position than boys.
Erkaklarga nisbatan bo'lgan munosabatdan ko'ra pastroq hisoblanadi.
And this attitude becomes an obstacle for girls to pursue an education and fully develop their capacities.
Rivojlanishlari uchun to'siq bo'lib qoladi.
Why don't we give the same opportunities to girls? Aren't we, women, also created by God?
When my parents got divorced, I was about 8 or 9 years old. At that age, you don't really understand the long-term kind of implications. This union that's been the source of life, really, that breaks. It really makes me wonder, like how those emotions of fear, of anger, and resentment and helplessness, how they give way to joy, to hope, to the ability to rebuild unity in one's family.
I was lost, with no purpose. I was a person without any dream, a person without any identity. One of the most difficult things for a human being is to leave his country, leave his home, leave his family. I decided to leave Iraq for a number of reasons, spiritual and material. We would mainly engage in argument to prove that my opinion is better than yours, my religion is better than yours, and my race is better than yours. Was the human being created to develop his soul, or to cause destruction and to create conflicts, which have no solution and no common goal?
Immediately following the declaration of the Bab in Persia, half a world away, when that first text message was sent, it's as if humanity had been given two means of communication at the same time. The declaration of the Bab opened the way for humanity to be unified in a spiritual sense. And the first instant message, the first Morse code, was sent, and the unprecedented communication and technological advances surged forward. Science and technology, coupled with spiritual teachings and harmony, together, intrinsically linked. And the technological advances that have taken place since that time have been truly revolutionary. The Bab means the gate, and just like the seed sacrificing itself for the tree,
the Bab sacrificed himself to usher in Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i faith. In the Baha'i faith, we often find reference to sacrifice, to service to humanity. In everything we do, it's a fine balance. The equality of men and women, the harmony of science and religion, the abolishments of extremes of wealth and poverty, crisis and victory. Everything exists in a fine balance, in equilibrium. The purpose of divine revelation, asserts Baha'u'llah, is to effect transformation in the whole character of mankind, a transformation that shall manifest itself both outwardly and inwardly. Thus, revelation has a twofold purpose. The first, to liberate humanity from the darkness of ignorance and guide it to the light of true understanding, and the second, to ensure the peace and tranquility of mankind. One without the other will not work. So, in this duality, I want to talk to you about another balance. Related to this concept of sacrifice is the concept of joy, arguably one of the most overlooked and underappreciated feelings. Except it's not really a feeling, it's a state of being. Happiness is a feeling. It's fleeting. You're either happy or you're not. It's an emotion. It comes and goes, like sadness and anger. But joy is the internal state of contentment that allows you to deal with life and to focus on the future rather than being paralyzed by that moment that you're in. You can have feelings of hardship and sadness, but if you approach them with a mindset of joy, it can actually change the way you think about those struggles and how you respond to them. Abdu'l-Baha shares, joy gives us wings. In times of joy, our strength is more vital, our intellect keener, and our understanding less clouded. We seem better able to cope with the world and to find our sphere of influence. The Baha'i writings clearly state that service to others constitutes the paramount motive of all existence, and that service to all humanity ultimately becomes service to God. For Baha'is, loving God means loving his creation, and the expression of that love is service. To help others, to give selflessly, freely, and generously of your time, your resources, your energy, and your heart, the Baha'i teachings say, means we have become truly spiritual beings. These concepts of service, of joy, of sacrifice, it's actually pretty straightforward. But we know that we live in troubling times, in divisive times, with an us versus them mentality. The message of Baha'u'llah is the education we need to bring us out of this darkness. As a Baha'i, it's your responsibility to contribute actively to the betterment of society, to put this theory of religion into practice. Throughout the history of the Baha'i faith, we are told of incredible sacrifices, of those who gave up their earthly possessions, their worldly desires, and dedicated themselves to the service of the Baha'i faith. From one of the early Western believers, Thornton Chase, who helped advance the writings of the Baha'i faith by creating the first Baha'i publishing trust, and was among one of the first men in America to advocate for the equality of men and women, to Louis Gregory, one of the first African-American Baha'is who not only advanced the Baha'i faith and traveled to Israel for pilgrimage in the early 1900s, but challenged conventional norms of the times in so many ways. The first African-American elected to the national governing body of the Baha'i faith, to marry a white woman when interracial marriage in the United States defied not only popular belief about racial segregation, but in many states was against the law. The Baha'i faith is filled with examples of people who have contributed selflessly and sacrificially to the betterment of society and the advancement of the principles of the Baha'i faith. It's a pretty high standard. So think of that for a moment. The concept of sacrifice, of service, of joy. What's your role in advancing the principles of the Baha'i faith? In a noteworthy book by Abdu'l-Baha, Memorials of the Faithful, we see a remarkable feature, namely the ordinary nature of so many of the lives described. On page after page, the book recounts the stories of simple individuals who, in the words of the translator, are so humble that the passing years would surely have refused them a history. Included are a tailor, a gardener, a dishwasher, a jeweler, a widowed housewife, and many others. Yet their actions, whether in the form of tireless service and steadfast loyalty, were recognized by Abdu'l-Baha as no less significant than the heroic sacrifices and legendary deeds that characterized some of those whom historians might regard as more noteworthy or of grander proportions. This remembrance of the power of the ordinary life and the recognition of the beauty of the simple but faithful soul stands in marked contrast to the large acts of heroism that are depicted throughout conventional history. Yet, by their inclusion, Abdu'l-Baha has implicitly broadened the meaning of heroism to include sacrificial choices made by ordinary people in the course of their daily lives. The beauty that Abdu'l-Baha witnessed in the sacrifices made by those who may appear as ordinary points to a broader understanding about the potential nobility of each and every human being, whatever their status in society, or the sacrifices perceived by the outside world. As Baha'u'llah writes, "O Son of Spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. Rise then unto that for which thou wast created." Expressions of human nobility may be found in all forms of self-sacrificial acts, whether large or small, extraordinary or ordinary, rare or constant. In fact, it is only when acts of selflessness become more common that they become a type of collective norm, a foundation upon which a just and equitable society can be built. Furthermore, this vision of human nobility provides a foundation for the principle of social equality. People are equal because they are all created with the potential to be noble. Each is endowed with the capacity to know, to love, and not to be overlooked, the ability to make decisions, to make choices, thus the concept of free will. These inherent human capacities are creative and are essential sources of social progress. Equally important, however, is the fact that this vision of human nobility also gives rise to a duty on the part of the individual to participate in the forward progress of society. So looking back at these priceless examples of sacrifice brings us to an understanding of intention, of how seemingly insignificant actions on the part of ordinary people can lead to extraordinary collective transformation over time. Thornton Chase and Lewis Gregory did not live to see the outcomes of the impact of their acts of service and sacrifice. The very things they pioneered and advanced over 100 years ago are still relevant issues that are being tackled now. Interracial marriage, the equality of men and women, the abolishment of prejudice. These are still very real challenges that our collective society is struggling to remedy and resolve every single day. And Baha'u'llah brought forth these teachings 150 years ago. Indeed, these broader insights become more apparent when you reflect upon the transformation of the Baha'i community, and that this progress, step by step, has been and will continue to be achieved through the cumulative sacrifices of countless individuals whose ordinary existence finds many parallels in the stories of the early believers. Without action, nothing can be accomplished. Progress, technology, innovation, society moves forward because people choose to act. It's not unlike the spiritual world. Words alone, unaided by action, cannot yield spiritual advances. As Abdu'l-Baha states, strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. Turn towards God and seek always to do that which is right and noble. Enrich the poor, raise the fallen, comfort the sorrowful, bring healing to the sick, reassure the fearful, rescue the oppressed, bring hope to the hopeless, shelter the destitute, This is the work of a true Baha'i. Baha'u'llah further declares, guidance hath ever been given by words, and now it is given by deeds. Strive then with heart and soul to distinguish yourself by your deeds. Man is organic with the world. His inner life molds the environment and is also deeply affected by it. When we think about building communities, we cannot ignore how much society influences the individual, and vice versa. As Shoghi Effendi states, we cannot segregate the human heart from the environment outside us. We all share this desire to make an impact, and we've been fed this narrative that in order to truly have an impact in the world, we have to do it on a big scale. Yet, as exemplified through the writings of the Baha'i faith, it's the spiritual intentions that must first be pure. So then what does it mean to build a real community? And where do you start? It starts with intention, authenticity, sacrifice, joy, friends coming together, changing one heart at a time. And we need to eliminate dichotomies, us versus them. When you try to solve a problem, that's pity. When you tackle a recognized problem together, that's empathy. You become one with the community that you're yearning to serve. Crisis and victory. Here are those two dualities again. This equals growth. And there are times when you want to give up. I'm tired. I'm busy. That's when we call upon our virtues of persistence, of resilience, of determination, of strength, and of compassion. And it takes a village, and it takes support, and you can't do it alone. The Baha'i writings clearly state that service to others constitutes the paramount motive of all existence, and that service to all humanity ultimately becomes service to God. For Baha'is, loving God means loving his creation, and the expression of that love leads to service. So seek out that path of service. If you don't look for it, it might not find you. To be a Baha'i simply means to love all the world, to love humanity, and to try to serve it, to work for universal peace and universal brotherhood.
Faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Unite and bind together the hearts. Unite and bind together the heart, join in the chord of the souls, join in the chord of the souls. Oh Lord, make his faces radiant through the light of thy oneness.
of the organizers, the cast, and the crew to create such a celebration of the bicentenary of the birth of the Bob. There will be more celebrations across the city of Calgary in the upcoming weeks, and we have prepared a card with those locations if you are interested in learning more about the Baha'i Faith, which is available in the lobby. In the lobby there is a table which also contains some booklets and a small prayer book if you wish to take it with you when you leave this evening. Thank you to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We invite you to please help yourself to the many refreshments and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.